You know what the news is today. And if you don't, I'm about to blow your mind. Frank Reich fired by the Carolina Panthers. Made it 11 games.
It's not very many.
It's not. That's Dennis Cox. I'm Tim Donnelly. My original question, right, because you watched the game yesterday, you watched them lose to the Tennessee Titans. My original question was going to be, is it even worth keeping Frank Reich around? That's what we were going to start the show with. Answer for David Tepper?
No.
Nope. And I hate to say this because Frank Reich seems like a good dude. Seems like a solid person. I saw just recently reports are coming out that he's letting it kind of be known that he sees this as the end of his NFL journey, and you never want that to be the case. Right? I'm a big believer in like chase your dreams, right? Everybody keep going. So you hate to see it come to the end for a guy that doesn't seem like he's a jerk, but it's the right move. It's the right move. If you know you're going to clean house, and it seems like the Panthers know that, they've not only fired Frank Reich, they've fired their assistant head coach and running backs coach, Deuce Staley. They fired their quarterbacks coach and Josh McCown, and I think there's probably more news to come. It's you have to ask yourself, is keeping him doing more harm than good? And I think we got to that point. Right? And you know, you might respect it. I think I do. The whole, like, if we're going down, I'm going to be the play caller and I'm going to be the one with the steering wheel as we hit the wall. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. In the 2 games since Frank Reich reclaimed the play calling, the Panthers have scored 20 points and allowed 11 sacks and averages 222.5 yards per game.
Ugh.
It's just not good enough. And it can only be said so many times. It's a results-based business. It's a what have you done for me lately business. He hadn't done enough lately. If you missed it this morning on our morning show, Unsportsmanlike, right here on 99.9 The Fan, Chris Canty, one of the co-hosts, reacted live.
It's ugly for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, the whole Bryce Young situation, now you're adding another layer of dysfunction around him while he's continuing to try to develop and live up to being the number 1 overall pick. Maybe it's on the board that you potentially missed on your quarterback, but it's becoming clear and obvious now that you missed on your head coach when there were head coaches that were there to be had that have shown that they can work with a team that's trying to build around a young signal caller. So it is as bad as you could imagine in Carolina, and there's not a whole lot of opportunity that they have for improvement because, again, they don't own their own first-round draft pick. It belongs to the Chicago Bears.
A lot of they. I'm starting to think it shouldn't be they, it should be he. Meaning David Tepper. They don't have their first-round pick. David Tepper doesn't have his first-round pick. They keep going through coaches. David Tepper keeps going through coaches. They don't have a roster built enough to win. David Tepper doesn't have a roster built enough to win. Keep in mind, when he took over the team, they'd won 11 games the year before, and they were in the playoffs. Since then, 6 consecutive losing seasons. Now 3 coaches going on 4. Whole mess of quarterbacks. Whole mess of play callers. Frank Reich is professional enough, and I believe honorable enough that he would have kept working. He would have kept coaching, right? Even once the writing was on the wall, he was never going to give up. He was never going to sabotage. He would have kept doing what's best for the team. So I didn't think he was going to do any damage if he stayed around. I said as much last week, right? I don't think he's doing any harm. You won't injure it worse. But if the only question and conversation around your team is when will Frank Reich get fired? Is this the day Frank Reich gets fired? If they lose to this team, will Frank Reich get fired? At a certain point, you have to look around and go, either I have to come out and make those questions stop being asked, right? Come out and say, he's not being fired. He's our coach next year. He's going to be able to lead this team out of this dark place. You either have to do that, or if you're David Tepper, you have to do what he ended up doing, which is eliminating the questions the other way.
Well, I'm sure the players probably have that same question too. It's like, wait, if I know you're probably out the door, why should I be listening to you?
And it's just, it puts a dark cloud over everything. Right, and it follows you around like it's the rain cloud in Charlie Brown, right? It's only raining over you. Other NFL teams are having fun. Other NFL teams, even rebuilding NFL teams, get to enjoy certain things. But if all you have is, will this guy get fired, it's not fun for anybody. It's not fun for us to ask the question every week. But if nothing changes, you have to ask it again. This team was in a bad place, is in a bad place, has been in a bad place. Now you to me, this is kind of like, trading a player for a draft pick, right? It feels like finality of something, but it's really not. It's only like this move, like, oh, I like this move. Oh, thankfully they fired Frank Reich. All these are the thoughts we're seeing. It all depends on who you replace him with.
Yeah, this is just the first step.
You could replace him, get this, with somebody worse. You could, trust me. Trust me. Urban Meyer's available.
No.
Like that, there are options. So now it's do you get the right person in place now? Well, actually, we'll use a recent example. Dennis, I know it's one that you're familiar with.
Okay.
Matt Rule was the head coach of the Carolina Panthers.
Yes, he was.
And things were not going well.
At the end of the day,
they did not.
At the end of the day, they were not going well. And the fan base wanted him gone.
Mm-hmm.
So they fired him. They replaced him on a permanent basis with Frank Reich. Turns out the day they fired Matt Rule was not the lifting of the anchor that you expected for that franchise. Now, maybe if they would have stuck with Steve Wilkes, we'd be in a different situation. But firing Frank Reich is only a good move if you have someone significantly better than Frank Reich in line this offseason to replace him. Somebody that's going to help Bryce Young more. Someone that's going to connect with the defense better, meaning get on the same page with Brian Burns on a long-term contract or not. Somebody that's going to work with the strength and conditioning staff to prevent so many gosh darn hamstring injuries. Somebody that's going to get the most out of a player like Miles Sanders and the most out of a player like Jonathan Mingo. Because if you have limited draft stock, which they do, you don't have a first-round pick, which they don't, you need to look around for improvement on the roster, so you need a coach that's going to come in and get more out of the guys already on that field. Panthers lost to the Tennessee Titans. That is an embarrassing loss, and I get it. It was a winnable game against the guy that was drafted, the quarterback, drafted in the second round of the exact same draft you traded up to get the guy number one. David Tepper doesn't strike me as someone that gets embarrassed and sits and takes it. He gets embarrassed, someone's going to pay. That's Frank Reich. And Deuce Staley. And Josh McCown. All of this is only an advantage if you put someone better in his position. If you put someone equally as ineffective, we'll be doing this again next year. This is the second consecutive year the Panthers have fired their coach mid-season. It's the second consecutive year Frank Reich has been fired as a head coach mid-season. Do you want to go for 3? David Tepper, go for the turkey, the hat trick. 3 strikes and you're out. Does that work?